Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and get onto Onshape and start using it. So the first thing you want to do is you want to open up your browser and go to onshape.com. Doesn't really matter what browser you use. You can even do this on your phone. I use Google Chrome just because that's what I prefer. So once you go to onshape.com, you'll be greeted by a web page that looks something like this. You're going to go up to the upper right and hit sign in. Then you'll wait a few seconds. And then I go down here to the bottom right that says sign up. Click that. Now you'll be taken to this page. And what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and get an Onshape education account. The Onshape education account allows you to get the access of all of the professional features, or almost all of the professional features as far as I'm aware, while still being free. If you, for some reason, can't get an educational account, you can always get the free Onshape for Makers account, which will be more than enough for this class. But if you might as well get the educational account and get all those extra features while you're at it. So we're going to go ahead and hit request your educational account, and you're going to go ahead and start filling out the information. So you're going to put in your name. Make sure you're using your @GMU email. Fun fact, if you're a freshman and you're slightly confused by the @MasonLive emails, your @masonlive.gmu.edu and your @gmu.edu emails are exactly the same, so you don't have to put in the MasonLive thing into your email address. You're going to say you're a student, you are in college or university, you're going to hit the checkbox, and you're going to hit say get started. Then you're just going to fill out some information about the university. So we go to George Mason University. The website URL is www.gmu.edu. We are in Fairfax. We are in Virginia. We are in the United States. My graduation year is 2021. Put in whatever graduation year you all are. And you could just put in your G number. And whatever your degree is, and I'm using it to teach Engineering 107. Most of this information doesn't really matter. As far as I'm aware, Onshape doesn't actually double check this with the university, but you might as well put it in because who knows, maybe they will start checking. You're going to hit agree to all of these boxes. You're going to say you're not a robot, and you're going to go ahead and click create account. I've already created an account, so I don't want to click this because I don't know if it will mess up anything. But once you hit create account, it will send you an email. Once you get that email, it will send you a verification link. You click that verification link, and you should be good to go. Now, getting right into it, as soon as you get your account verified, you could go ahead and sign in, and you'll be greeted with a page that looks approximately like this. Mine is a lot more crowded because I've been using this for various other projects, but you'll be greeted by a dashboard that looks something like this. So we're going to go ahead and create a studio. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the upper left, and we're going to hit Document. And I'm going to name this GMU Engineering 107 Part 2 because my Part 1 recording did not save, so this is Part 2. And I'm going to hit OK. Now, everything you do in Onshape is done through a single document. You don't have to create a bunch of different documents. That's one of the great things about Onshape workflow is every single project is confined to one single document. Now, here in the document, you're instantly greeted by this screen. And you'll see you'll have these three planes out here in front of you. You'll have this toolbar up on top. You'll have this timeline on your left. And down here, you'll have two different studios. You'll have your Part Studio, which is automatically created, and your Assembly. If you go over to your Assembly, it's completely blank. We're going to not worry about that this video. We're only going to focus on the Part Studio this video. All right, so let's say I want to just start creating a part. And I'm not going to create anything particularly useful. I'm just going to create something. Whatever happens, happens. Now, from the first video, I told you that the very first thing that always starts your CADing process is a sketch. So you're going to come up here to the upper left, and there's a big sketch button. You're going to hit sketch. And one of the helpful things about Onshape is sometimes it'll pop up with these dialog boxes that tell you what to do. So in this case, it's asking me to select a sketch plane. It doesn't matter which plane I choose, but I'm going to click on the front one. And so now you can see this new Sketch 1 plane kind of pops up parallel to the front plane. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over here to my view cube, and your view cube is this thing in the upper right. And I'm going to, because I clicked on the front sketch plane to start my sketch, I'm actually going to click on front on the view cube. And that's going to make me look straight at the plane I'm sketching, which is helpful when I'm working in 2 dimensions. So now I'm just kind of getting a 2-dimensional view. Sweet. So one thing you might have noticed once we actually started the sketches is the toolbar changed. We have a whole bunch new tools up here that weren't here previously. For the purposes of this class, we're only really going to focus on the couple tools here on the left. We're not really going to go out here for these other ones, though you're free to mess around with them and see what each and every one does. I'm going to start with a rectangle. So I'm going to hover over this and I'm just going to click. So now that I have the rectangle highlighted, I'm going to come over here to the origin point, which is this black dot in the center of the screen. I'm going to click, and I'm just going to drag my mouse. I'm not holding down any mouse buttons. My hand's free. I'm just dragging my mouse to the upper left. And I'm going to place it down. And it doesn't really matter. I'm not caring about proportions right now. But you see, I now, after I click, have a shaded rectangle covering the area. Now, I'm still clicking on the rectangle thing. It's still highlighted, so if I hit escape on my keyboard, it will cancel that. And I'm just going to hit the big green check mark. I'm going to hit OK. And that finishes my sketch. As you see, the toolbar has changed back to where it started. I am no longer in the sketch workspace. I have finished my sketch, and you can see if I move around, I have created a 2-dimensional sketch on the front plane. Just as a little tip, in order to move around like this, I am pressing the right mouse button down on my mouse, and that allows you to orbit an object. So I am orbiting just by holding down the right mouse button. If you hold down your middle mouse button, that allows you to pan. And so the holding down right mouse button and holding down middle mouse button are both very useful tools. And you'll see me do this a lot. Additionally, you can use your view cube in the upper right to get different viewpoints as well. So if you ever see me moving in weird directions, just know that's how I'm doing it. Okay, so I've created my sketch, and we know the next thing to do is to extrude. So right here next to the extrude, or next to the sketch button, there's this little icon that says extrude when you highlight over it. So I'm going to click on that, and it brings up this little box. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the sketch I made, and I'm just going to left click. And what that's going to do is it's going to pop out a preview, kind of a slightly opaque preview. And it automatically always goes to a depth of 1 inch, or extrusion of 1 inch. I can grab this arrow right here. If I hold down left click, I can extrude out further. I could also just go over here to where it says depth, and I could change that to, let's say, 3 inches. And I'll come up here to the check mark, and I'll hit OK. And so there I have it. I have a 3-dimensional part. It's just this giant rectangle. It's called part number 1. It was a single sketch and a single extrusion. A sketch and extrusion is all you need to make a part. If you don't have both of those, you cannot make a part. You cannot make a part with just a sketch, and you cannot make a part with just an extrusion. You need both of them. So I'm going to create a second part here. First off, I'm going to hide my first part, and if you hover over your parts down here, there's a little eye icon. If I click on the eye icon, it will make the part disappear. I could bring it back by clicking on the eye again, but for right now, I'm just going to hide it. All right, cool. So I'm going to create a second part. I'm going to create a sketch, and this sketch I'm actually going to do on the top plane this time. So I created a sketch on the top plane. I'm actually going to hit the top viewpoint so I can look at it straight on. And I'm going to create, this time I'm going to try and create a square. But if you notice, there's no square tool. So I'm going to go down to rectangle, And a square is just a rectangle where all the sides are congruent. So I'm going to click on the origin. I drag my mouse up here. I'm going to click somewhere. Doesn't really matter where. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the dimension tool. So I'm going to go up here, and the dimension tool is this guy right here, kind of in the middle. You can also press D on your keyboard, but I'm going to click it for right now, and it's now highlighted. And so now what happens, if I click on an edge, let's say I'll click on this left edge, and I drag my mouse out a little bit, it tells me exactly how long that edge is. It currently says 2.464. And if I click with my left mouse button, it will give me an option to enter a new number. So let me enter 3, and I'll hit enter on my keyboard. And that automatically makes that edge 3 inches. If I go up here to the top edge as well, I can again dimension it, and I'll type in 3. Cool. So now, because the opposite sides of a rectangle are always congruent, by dimensioning just 2 sides to the same number, I now have a perfect square. Alright, so let's say we wanted to add a circle to the middle of the sketch. What I'll do is I'll come over here, do the circle tool right here in the left side, and I'll click on it, and I'll drop it approximately in the center, and I'll hit enter. Now it automatically placed down a dimension tool here for me. If I hit escape on my keyboard, because currently I'm highlighting this, I'm going to hit escape on my keyboard. I can actually double click on this dimension and change it to whatever I want. So let's say I want you to be 1 inch. Cool. So now the circle is 1 inch, but notice I could grab the circle and move it around wherever I want. I obviously don't want that. I want it to be approximately in the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dimension between 2 points. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to the dimension tool. I'm going to left click the center of the circle, and I'm going to left click this edge. That's automatically going to spit out a dimension. If I left click to place it down, I could set it to whatever I want. So let's say I want it to be halfway along that edge. The edge is 3 inches. I want it to be halfway, so I'm going to divide it by 2. 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. I hit enter. It automatically places it down. Now notice it now prevents me from going anywhere else. I could go up and down because I've only dimensioned it in 1 point, but I cannot move left or right. So that's actually a pretty nifty trick. An error popped up there. So now what I could do is I could dimension again to another point. So let's say I want to dimension between you and you. And I want you to again be 1.5. And now I could try grabbing this and moving it around, but I obviously can't because I've dimensioned it in I've constrained it in every possible way. One way to tell if your parts are properly constrained is they will be completely black. If they have any blue to them, like if I remove that, you can see how the circle is blue, and that means there's a constraint that's not there. Another helpful tip, one thing about Onshape is it likes to automatically grab centers. So as you might notice, if I drag my circle up here to the center of this this line, and I drag it back down, it will automatically try and create a center point mate. It will automatically define that this circle, the center of this circle, is supposed to be on the center line of that line. And if I place it down, I suddenly get an over constraint error because this this dimension says I have to be exactly 1.5 inches away from this line, while this guy says no, you have to exactly be on the halfway point of my line. And even though we know that's the same thing, they're both halfway, Onshape doesn't like that. So if you ever get this big red error, it's always helpful just press Control Z and try again. So I'm gonna again place the dimension I need, 1.5 inches, and there we go. So I'm gonna hit Finish Sketch on the upper left, and I'm gonna go up here to the Extrude button. Now whenever you extrude, I always recommend moving from your 2D view into a 3D view, just by either using the middle mouse button or using the view cube in your upper right, just because that helps visualize the extrusion so much easier. If I try extruding, like if I hit the extrude button and I click on my sketch, I don't really know what's going on here. But if I now look at it from the side, I get a much better interpretation of what's happening. So again, if I show you all what I just did, I'm going to go up here to the extrude button, hit extrude. I'm clicking outside of the circle but inside of the square. And as soon as I do that, you'll notice it extrudes out that shape, and it removes the circle because it's only extruding things that it can touch. And since the circle is a closed system, it's not extruding inside that circle. It can't get inside that circle. If I come over here and I click the inside of the circle, it will fill that in as well. I'm going to hit Control Z because I don't want to do that. And I could again set the depth to whatever I want. So let's say 2 inches. Okay, cool. So now I have my parts. I could go back here and bring in part number 1 again by hitting the visibility thing. And if I wanted to make any changes, I could always go in and edit these things. That's one of the great things about Onshape workflow is it's very easy to go back and edit. So let's say that circle wasn't supposed to be 1 inch. It's actually supposed to be 2 inches. Well, I know that that was sketch number 2 because part 2 was made by sketch 2. So I could go back in here, and if I double click on that sketch, it will reopen that sketch that I was previously in. And I could go back here and I could double click a dimension, let's say the diameter of this circle, and I could change it. So let's make you 2 inches. And that will automatically update any later changes or any later things I did, such as this extrusion. I could also go in and edit extrusions as well. So if I double click on this extrusion, it allows me to change it. So let's say I wanted this to actually be 4 inches instead of 2 inches. There's that. Boom. So it's very easy to go back in and change stuff. One helpful tip is I recommend naming different things. So like I could go back in here, I could rename this sketch as say part 2 sketch, or maybe rectangle with hole, or something like that. Because if you're working on a complicated project, you might have tons of parts and tons of sketches and extrusions, and so renaming them is a helpful way of keeping track of what is what. So yeah, that's all of the basics you really need to know for Part Studios. In the next assembly, we will go on to assemblies. So I hope you see you there.